Good morning, everyone. I was expecting all of the group to be in this session today. However, in order for you to have an idea of what has been disclosed in this session, I'll be sharing to you a bit of the slides I prepared on information technology and systems audit. Remember that we have agreed that part of the course requirement in the master's program management information systems is for you to conduct an information systems audit via a case study in your organization or any organization in that matter. So in Coursera, I ask you to complete the course on information systems audit and controls. However, should you have not able to recall all the processes systems involved in doing an IS audit, for you to do your case study, I hope this slide will be able to give you at least a bit of knowledge on how are you going to perform and to prepare the document that you needed to fulfill the requirements in this course. So your IT audit basically is an examination or evaluation of an organization's IT infrastructure, policies, and operations, including its environment, the people involved, and the processes involved. It is the process of collecting and evaluating evidence to determine whether a computer system safeguards assets, maintains data integrity, allows organizational goals to be achieved effectively, and uses resources efficiently. Now, while this definition has been defined to us by certain standards under the UNDP and the ISACA.org, there may be other definition of um, an IT audit or IS audit that you have encountered, but nonetheless, uh, performing an IT audit or IS audit is basically looking into the different um, factors affecting the attainment of organizational goals and objectives by way of its information technologies, infrastructure, people, policies, processes, and operations, and its environment in general. So do we do auditing in as far as information technology and information systems are concerned, and by profession as IT practitioners, because we need to look at attaining um, safeguards of our asset that may either be in private institutions or government institutions. And what are these assets? This includes the data that emanates from the organization and that comes outside the organization or vice versa. The different application systems that has been in place in the organization, ranging from back end to front end, the different physical technology in place in surrounding the organization, the different resources that has to do with information technology, information systems, and finally, the people, the staff, the competencies of these people, and we need to safeguard all of these things because they all form part of the organization. Also, we perform auditing of information technology or information systems in our organization so that we are able to ensure that the 7 attributes of data and information are maintained. So, as I have said, IS organizations, organizations, particularly uh, whether that's private or government, small, medium, or large enterprises, have certain assets that has to be ensured that it is safe, secured, and conforms to standards. So these assets in organizations include internal and external, data, as I've said kanina, the different application systems, technologies, including databases, networks, operating systems, hardwares, resources. That includes supplies, other equipment that needs to ascertain or contain information systems data. Yan. More so, ang pinaka-importanting assets sa isang organization as a management at the management context are its people, because the data, the application systems, the technologies, and the resources are useless without safeguarding your people, the staff skills, particularly those whom you trust in organization, the skills, their competencies. That's what we safeguard here. And performing an IT audit along this matter is relevant, especially nowadays that we are constrained at many kinds of attacks, whether internally or externally. The 7 attributes of data or information that I was talking about that relates to information systems, information technology, and how are going to look at it to ensure that the organization attains its goals and objectives includes, and not limited to these. Yeah, that's effectiveness, which is dealing more with information, having it being relevant to the need, pertinent to the organizational processes, whether it's delivered timely, correct, consistent, and in a usable manner. Hence, number one alone is a very big challenge, especially considering standards. Efficiency looks more of how data information has been optimized economically and productively using available resources. We conduct IS audit to ensure that data or information adhere to certain confidentiality matters, protection of sensitive information. We employ, or do we employ uh, security measures on disclosing of information, dissemination of data or information or report. Number 4, integrity relates to the accuracy, completeness of information as well as to its validity in accordance to the organizational goals and objectives. They are basic sets of values and expectations. Number 5, availability of data or information relates to whether or not uh, the data is available on a timely manner. The data available are are sorry, the data or information available have been secured to support organizational processes. Number 6, on compliance are the sets of data or information, the processes, the operations comply with different rules, regulations along data protection, data privacy, information security, and so forth and so on, so that organizational processes may not be paralyzed. Hence, an IS audit is essential. Relating to compliance means how does these IS, IT, information technology resources be able to deal with providing data or information which is compliant to such rules, regulations, and agreements. And finally, how reliable the information being prepared, how reliable the information being stored, how reliable are the sources of data or information that has to be becoming part of the internal processes or vice versa. Now, There are four phases of the audit processes that has been detailed out by ISACA or the UNDP report. And by normally, we used to follow this when we try to do systems development life cycle. We do perform a research activity, and this is not new to us anymore because by all means, the phases here deals to what we usually do in systematic investigation, scientific inquiry, case studies in that matter. So that includes planning, looking at the objectives, then we gather the data, and then we report the findings. So isa-isahin lang po natin. At planning, we do preliminary assessment and information gathering by way of understanding the organization. Now, at the organizational context, we look at how does the organization function, the operating inputs and outputs, its operating environment in general. So, when you will be doing this one, you might want to consider if you want to look at the general overall context of the organization, I mean the entirety of the entity, or you may want to limit on a specific office. Kasi baka mamaya niyan, masyado kayong matagalan dun sa case study. So while it is true that the certain office you may want to evaluate relates to other offices, it is important that you look at the connectivity on the functions and on how the operations of your unit with other units connect, so that you'll be able to understand what are the organizational inputs and outputs that relates to your study. Also, understanding the organization means understanding its people, the flow of communication, the flow of information, uh, input and output channels, and that boils down to looking at the organizational structure. Also, understanding the organization means understanding how critical information technology in general and information technology systems are crucial to attaining the organizational vision, mission, goals, objectives. How and in what way does these information technology structures and IT systems deliver to the intended learning outcomes? Sorry kung education man yan. Intended outcomes, organizational outcomes of your organization. In school, how does this information technology structures and IT systems be able to contribute to learning outcomes naman kung sa education siya. Also, understanding the organization is also understanding the nature of hardware and software being used. So, are the hardware truly contributory to attaining the organizational objectives? Are the software being used be effective and efficient enough to deliver outcomes? Are hardware or software obsolete, or is there a need to improve setup? Is there a need to change the current software being installed, update, so forth and so on? Understanding the organization also looks into the nature and extent of risk affecting information technology infrastructure and information systems. In such case, you'll not be limiting only on hardware and software, but the operations and processes, including operations that has to be part of your organization. So how are you going to achieve phase 1? You may not be an auditor in this context, but you may be a principal investigator so that you'll be able to understand or gather the required information. Here, you'll be asking to look after materials in the organization, including publications, annual reports, independent audit or analytical reports that emanates, that comes from your organization, or that is being distributed from your organization going outside, and as well as information that comes from outside entity into the organization. Also, you might want to look at the short term, middle term, long term development plans of the organization, so that you'll be able to look into gaps, best practices that deals with information systems and information technology management in the organization. While interviewing of key personnel may be effective, you might as well look into um, defining an interview guide question for you to be able to solicit from them the answers to your questions, particularly looking at strategies on how are going to attain answers to your questions. Observations via actual visiting to key organizational facilities will be important also. So, from interviewing, you might want to sit down for a day to observe the processes. While there are closed circuit televisions that are available in the organization to look at their operations without you physically present in the organization, you have to consider policies along how can you get access to their CCTV footage. We have to look into data privacy activities, policies in that context. So, achieving phase one may be already giving you already handful information so that you'll be able to begin doing your case study. And evidences will not lie, sabi nga nila. And performing documentary analysis here, interview, and review of document as well as observations already physical and evident for you to obtain required information. Phase 2, once you're able to ascertain all of those needed report, the uh, physical observation, and has gathered meaningful insights from interview, you'll now develop or define your audit objectives and scope. Here, you'll you'll state your general objective on doing the case study already. You'll be defining a general or specific objectives for your assessment to be conducted in the organization. Now, we may find it bias when you'll be auditing your specific unit assigned. So, halimbawa sana, you're working at the MIS office and you're doing an IS audit in your office. So, you might want to consider leaving your comfort zone so that you'll not be putting any bias into your findings, to your assessment, to your results, to your case study. So one best strategy para matanggal yung bias at talaga makuha natin yung current case scenario in that organization you're working is to move away from your office. That way, other groups may want to come in to do the case study in your office. Sa halimbawa sana, sa case ng Gonzaga group natin, na ang dami nila sa Gonzaga, it is true that there are units employing IT and IS policies in their offices. One may look at the other office alternately para matanggal yung bias sa sa kanila. Although hindi ko naman sinasabing baka magkaroon ng bias, pero we cannot remove that mindset kasi you're working in one organization. Best pa rin kung you come into one organization as an independent researcher or independent auditor. So, like for the case ng CSU Gonzaga, going outside CSU Gonzaga. Yung mga taga CSU Apari can come into CSU Gonzaga or vice versa. Yung mga nasa Santa Ana can study more of what's in Gonzaga, vice versa. Or kung constrained naman tayo sa IATF protocols, then it's best that we look at certain organization that employs these processes near you or within the locality para hindi naman tayo masyadong maka-violate sa AITF protocols. So, in this phase, in my slides, your objectives may be dependent on which of the areas of concern you'll be dealing with more. Here, in this slide kasi is more of the risk part, risk assessment to define audit objective and scope. So, while most of us will be looking more of security, risk management, particularly confidentiality, integrity, and availability, you may want not to focus more on these. You may want to focus only on specific items of the IS audit or information technology audit. Anyhow, the tools are already made available for you. It's a standard tool that you can use to evaluate, to perform audit in your organizations. So it's already in your lens. Just look at appendix number 5 at the lower more part of the PDF. It's available also at UNDP and isaka.org. Yan. So, how are we going to do a risk-based approach to making an audit plan? So, number 1, make an inventory of the IS systems used in the organization. Then categorize them. Alam naman siguro natin yung categories ng information systems. And while there may be variants of categorizations of information systems, it's best that you look at standards na lang para hindi tayo mawala sa context nun. So, MIS may be one branch of IS, like you may want to deal more of categorizations of management information systems so that you will be able to explicitly define and align categorization of systems based on the management context. Number 2, assess critical assets. Here we determine which of the systems impact critical functions or assets. Alin dun sa mga systems na meron sila greatly contribute to IS organizational goals and objectives. Which of the assets I mean the hardware and software resources they have greatly contribute to attaining the goals and objectives, and which are not. Like you might as well recommend later on that this needs to be phased out. This ones needs to be replaced already in your findings later on. Number 3, assess risk. Here we assess what risk affect these systems and the severity of impact on the business. Assessing risk may be crucial because you'll be considering greater cost associated to these systems, to these assets. And we'll look at risk here in the context of how does data information that emanates from these information systems or these systems greatly contribute to a greener pasture for the organization, or the reverse side. Meaning, if we consider this data and looking at the severity of its impact using these information systems, will it leverage the organization, or will it just stay the same? Will we be exposing too much data to people, to others, or not? Are we not putting risk to our assets, to our data, to our organization? Yun yung ating mga isipin dito with number 3. And then number 4, based on the assessment sets, decide on audit priority. Decide on the resources, the schedule, and the frequency on how are you going to do the risk-based approach to make an audit plan. Prioritize only on which of these you'll have to look at when making the assessments. So, itong controls, pwede nating i-evaluate din. We'll look at the entire organization in general. So, when we're trying to assess different controls that has been in place or not in place in the organization, we can categorize them into 3. So, we look at preventive controls inclusive of operations and inputs. How does the organization be able to monitor both operations and inputs? Are there controls to attempt predicting potential problems before they occur and make adjustments? Are there controls in the organization or in the system alone to prevent error, omission, or malicious act from occurring? So, are there preventive control measures that are in place in the organization? Are there preventive controls in place in the information system? Yan. So, that's preventive in general. Para before pa mag-occur yung problem, yung risk, then there are already levels of preventive controls in place. That includes the organization in general, the information technology infrastructure, and the information system. So, pumili kayo doon kung anong concern nyo doon. Are you going to assess preventive control measures that are in place in terms of the organizational context, in terms of its information technology infrastructure only, or your information systems only? You might as well consider these 3 if you want. Next element of next control could be detective. Our information systems equipped with controls that detect and report the occurrence of an error, omission, or malicious act. So, say for example, you're already in place, you're working it, or you're in the organization working already, and you would want to look at the capability of the organization, the information system, the information technology infrastructure, that these sets of controls are in place so that whenever an error occurs, it automatically gives us feedback. A malicious activity that is already occurring is easily detected. So, are there controls in the organization, in the IT infrastructure, and in the information systems in general? And kapag nandun na yung threat, nandun na yung risk, are there corrective controls that has to be that are in place? Are there corrective controls to correct the issues, correct the error, to remove the malicious activity? That's corrective. Are there controls to resolve problems discovered by detective controls? Ganun. So parang ano yan, may level. Before pa mag-occur, may preventive ka na. Occurring, meron ka dapat detective control. Corrective, paano mo na paano mo na ibibigyang solusyon yung na-detect. So, are these controls in place or not? Are there levels of controls in the organization? Are the level of controls effective, efficient? So, pwede na rin itong isang case study. At phase 3, evidence collection and evaluation. So here, we already performed various techniques to prove and collect data that needs to answer our objective. So techniques should be carefully be chosen, and these techniques should be properly addressed. How are we going to provide critical solutions to the objectives, specific objectives that we have laid down? So types of audit evidence may be inclusive of observation of the physical setting, the physical setup. Another one could be documentary analysis, both hard documents and electronic documents. And analysis of the system process, whether that be the manual operating process, whether that be system specific, yung mismong information system na, yung how does the processes work. Kumbaga parang you'll need to do flow charting, data flow analysis, context diagramming, use case analysis, for you to be able to analyze and gather data from audit evidences. So your methods of collection of audit evidences, as I have said, may be done other than observation and analytical procedure. You can do interview. These 5 methods actually triangulates or revalidates the audit evidences that proves your claim or answers to the specific objectives you would want to undertake. So qualitative interview is important, and that should not be redundant already on whether you have a checklist. at interviews, you may use checklists. You may use your interview guide, and just make sure you have a wide ear to clearly understand and comprehend the interviews being made. Questionnaires, a structured questionnaire is already in the PDF that I have shared you. Yun nga lang, what's with questionnaire is that will not be able to explicitly elicit the real score in the auditing you would want to do, especially when pinasagot lang dun sa staff nila yung questionnaire. So, an alternate way to do questionnaire, I mean to validate what's written in the questionnaire, is to doing the interview, doing the observation, doing the analytical procedure, and to do a analysis of the flow of the operations. Yung nasabi ko, flow charting na pwede natin gawin in analyzing the operations of the system in general, the operations of the physical organization in general. There are other tools that we can use to gather evidences. If you are handling information systems and you would want to focus at your case studies more on IS, like Lens, halimbawa, you'll need the software. And these 5 here could help you gather evidences to look at and to evaluate the current status of the information system, the information technology infrastructure, and the organization in general. So, generalized audit software, industry-specific audit software, utility software programs, specialized audit software, concurrent auditing techniques are all available online to mention. I hope you're familiar with computer-aided auditing tools, and that are so many available online. So number 4, you'll now start writing the entire report. So the documentation includes the planning and preparation of the scope and objectives, the audit activities you have done, the audit program, the evidences that you have elicited, which were your basis of doing your findings and conclusion. All work papers, including general file pertaining to the organization and the system. The different points disclosed in the interview. What are the observations made during the actual performance, or kung hindi ka physically present, then you may ask for a copy of the CCTV footage to observe the processes, and then you need to report that. And documentation also includes a record of the different reports you have viewed, yung documentary analysis na ginawa mo, and other inputs that could be very useful to complete the package of your case study report. So, your structure of the report, yung atin pong isasubmit na report, is a technical report in nature. It follows the ACM formatting, yung sa kung paano siya physically makikita, babasahin, paano yung font, paano yung spacing. Download ACM format at acm.org. It's there. But the parts of the report may be generally called IMRAD in nature, but you may want to adapt here introduction, which detail us background of the study, some literature review, and some background of the organization you're doing the case study, in which you were doing the case study. And then What are your specific objectives? General and specific objectives. What is the focus of the case study report? That's scope and limitation. Especially, you would want to lay down here that you only focus on, like for example, yung nabanggit ko, you will want to only to focus on preventive controls employed in the organization, preventive controls employed in information technology structure, preventive controls in information systems. Pwede naman yung preventive, detective, and yung isang corrective controls used in IT infrastructure, in IS, and in organizations. So, ang dami nyo nang pwedeng idea kung anong focus lang ninyo na case study. Then, I have said methodology in there is already in place. So, idadagdag ko lang sa methodology, you should be able to employ in there yung location, yung participants, kung sino yung mga involved na tao, for you to gather the data, your steps, your data gathering procedure, and specific tools na ginamit mo, and then how you analyze this. This is the statistical treatment you would have used in your case study. Normally naman, ang design natin yan descriptive na descriptive na siya. And ang ating statistical tools normally are, since it's descriptive, this is only frequency count, percentages, rank, and weighted mean. And that would be very easy for you. And then for results and discussion, just provide us in your paper the significant findings you have found in your case study. So for example, your objectives would look into what are the challenges, best practices, gaps relating to preventive controls in the organization. Then you need to answer them one by one in the results and discussions. And then at conclusion, you'll have a general concluding statement. Yung parang ginagawa lang natin sa science investigatory projects na the researchers therefore conclude, the investigators therefore conclude, we therefore conclude that blah, 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 blah. And then from these findings, what are your implications? What are your recommendations? Just lay them down here. And then at references, kindly follow the APA style. IEEE standards in doing the referencing. So, numbered po yan. And then, paki-attach lang po yung questionnaire na ginamit ninyo para at least alam naman natin kung anong way of obtaining yung data that has been part of your case study report. So, I'm sharing this slide and this video in the group so that you'll be able to get access of some articles na ang context niya ay auditing. And how are you going to write also your article, your case study. So these are just few. There are many other articles that can be seen, that can be read online, especially at isaka.org. There are a lot of journals there that could help you do your auditing report. So I think that's all. Thank you. For inquiries, just email me, just post a comment in the group, and I would love to hear from you. So once you're decided that you would want to have it be checked by yours truly, Halimbawa, sana yung sinasabi ni Miss Jean na title and objectives, you may want to send it to me in the group or private chat or email, then I'll be very glad to hear from you anytime soon. And yung mga hindi natin na-disclose na topics, you may find this in the PDF attached at Lens, or you can search it at UNDP and isaka.org. Good day. Thank you.